Hello friends, I'm Dr. Mukhopadhyay, a shoulder and sports injury specialist with Saqsham Orthopedics. Let's discuss about some basic FAQs related to sports injuries. People have a lot of questions, so just let me try and answer a few of them. Sports injuries leading to death are very uncommon in today's date. They were quite prevalent rather in the olden days when adequate precautions weren't taken. But in today's date, they are very rare. Still, some injuries which can lead to death are head injuries like concussions, pretty common on the football field, direct chest injuries leading to sudden cardiac death. These incidents have happened in the past. If you go through the history of FIFA or Olympics, we have had histories of deaths. But then these are very uncommon in today's date क्योंकि हम बहुत precautions लेते हैं. This would not be a very apt question like which sports causes the maximum injuries. Every sports has its related share of injuries. Definitely more contact sports are more prone to injuries. If you are a boxer and a wrestler, definitely you are in direct combat with your opponent, so you are more prone to injuries. But the incidences of injuries on a football field or on a cricket field are almost as high. Footballers are very prone to knee injuries, ligament injuries, ankle injuries. Tennis players are prone to shoulder and elbow injuries. Swimmers are prone to shoulder injuries. Cricketers have very common injuries to the fingers, the wrist and the shoulder. So it would not be right to say कि इस sports में injuries सबसे ज़्यादा होती है, but rather we should look into the common injuries related to the particular sport. So injury is a part of every sport. Anybody who is playing a particular sport is at a risk of injury, not because that his technique is wrong or something else, but the very fact that you are more aggressive on the field makes you prone to injuries. But definitely we can prevent them by having a good warm-up session, preparing your body well, using the adequate protective equipments and having a good warm-up and cool down. But despite every precaution that you take, despite the best technique that you use, the risk of injuries would always be there. We can always bring them down, we can always prevent them, but थोड़ा सा रिस्क तो रहता ही है. Some basic items that every sports person should have is most importantly an ice pack. Whenever you are injured on the field, you should always use an ice pack to cool down the injured part, rest it. You should have a splint so that any injured part could be splinted. You should have a pain relief spray, a bottle of water to rehydrate yourself. These are some basic things which you should be carrying in your kit. So the golden period is not with relation to the sports, but with relation to the kind of injury that you have had and when you look at going back to the particular sport. The earlier you get treated, the faster is the recovery and the shorter is the rehabilitation period. So there is no specific reason why you should delay getting treated. Every specific injury would definitely have its own time span, but the earlier you get yourself diagnosed and treated, the better are the outcomes. So the very reason why we treat sports person is that we can send them back to sports. We have had in the past people who have gone back from the worst kind of injuries to winning medals again. So definitely it's possible to get back to the sports and start winning medals again. I have worked with, I think, a swimmer who had recently, he's a national level swimmer who had recently injured his knee, had a multi-ligament injury, an ACL and an MCL injury. I operated on him, did a ACL and MCL reconstruction, and by the end of 3 months is back in the pool, is swimming and training for his next tournament. So RICE therapy is basically what you need to do post the injury immediately in the acute scenario. Rest, ice pack, compress and elevate. These are the golden words that you must remember whenever you are on the field and you get injured. Be it you or your partner or the opponent, this would be life-saving for him. I think don't be scared of injuries. Injuries is a part and parcel of not only sports but life. But we keep living, so you must keep playing and keep winning.